wonderful thing about organic matter, you can grow it on farms. That's what farms do. They grow organic matter. And there is no better way to make land fertile than to grow something on it and put that back into the soil. I can understand the interest in bringing in outside organic matter, purchasing it, because the world we live in is determined to sell you things whether you need them or not. When it comes to an ignorant species, human beings are bordering on getting a prize for that because we do things that make very little sense. Fascinatingly enough, I've been on my present farm since 1968. Not once in all those years has an entomologist from the University of Maine come down to my farm to find out how I'm managing. They have no interest in learning that they are wrong.
Welcome to the Market Gardener Podcast, where we believe that small-scale farming is changing the world. Join us for insightful conversations with people who are working to build a better future. A future with less mass production and more production by the masses. The revolution is in the field. Let's get digging. This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. If you've been enjoying the show so far, make sure to hit the subscribe button. It's a small thing to do, but for us, it means the world. The subscribe button allows us to keep promoting the show. It allows us to keep inviting new guests, more diverse guests, to have these enlightened conversations. Let's keep these conversations going. Help us by subscribing to the channel. All right, everyone. Welcome to the Market Gardener Podcast. Today's edition is a very special one for two reasons. First of all, because we're kind of live in a room with other attendees. We're
Looks
at
like about 50 people, maybe.
50 people. We're at the Canopy Retreat program here at the Old Mill. And mostly because we're with Eliot Coleman, which I think everyone knows who he is. Eliot, it's a great pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thanks, JM.
Could you say why Eliot means so much to you?
Well, that's a big question, and I don't want to cry. So when I was starting in farming, it was like most people. The first book I read was The New Organic Grower that Eliot had written. And it was really my Bible because I didn't know anything about farming. So I was reading the book, and I probably read it 30 times. Just reading every year, and Eliot, you might relate to that. And new passages would become clearer to me as I was learning how to farm. You know, the chapter on green manure became more relevant. And then the chapter on a pest positive approach became more relevant. And I just learned this way. I met Eliot later on in my journey and visited his farm. And eventually he introduced me to Mr. D, with whom I started FQT Farm. But I also listened to a lot of his podcasts and episodes, his lectures, his talks. I was trying to learn from Eliot as much as I can. And the one thing that I've learned the most from you, Eliot, is how to be a gentleman and how to have fun in life. And that's something that, again, last night, having beers, that's super cool. So it's really an honor to be with you, Eliot.
So,
If I remember right, JM, after that first meeting, you invited me and Barbara to have dinner with you at a restaurant in Montreal, and I think they were serving foie gras in some uncommon mix.
Yeah, we went to Le Pied de Cochon. You
That's
remember?
right.
Le Pied de Cochon, which is
right.
Martin Picard's famous restaurant here in Montreal. And we had these little balls. If you remember them, we put them in our mouth. They were hot balls of foie gras. And that was quite spectacular. And they treated him like him and Barbara being his wife, lovely wife. And they treated him as a king, as well-deserved farmers when they go to restaurants. They deserve to be well fed and well served.
So, Eliot, I have a first question for you. I'm pretty excited about it. Have you reached the top of the mountain yet?
Oh, that's a great metaphor. I also used to run rivers and kayaks, so I also refer to the end of the river. But the nice thing about small farming is there's no top. Back when I was running rivers or when I was climbing mountains, the dullest moment was when you put your feet on top. Oh my gosh, the challenges were all over. There was nothing new to do except turn around and go back down. And this mountain doesn't have a top. I'm learning new things every day. And back, I forget, it was a few months ago, maybe more, when one of JM's management team, there's so many beautiful young women around here on that management team, I can't remember which one, asked me if I would come to this thing. And I remember back when I was learning the game, and I would travel everywhere. And one of the places I traveled was up to Maine to meet Helen and Scott Nearing because I'd read their book, Living the Good Life, and it inspired me. And Scott was what I refer to as an honest socialist. He walked his talk. And at one point, he and Helen said, well, heck, you're looking for land. We're not using the back half of our place. We'll sell it to you. And being an honest socialist, he sold it to me for what they'd paid for it 20 years before. So we got 60 acres for $2,000, which came out to $33 an acre. Now, that wasn't quite as good a deal as it sounds because it was all covered in spruce and fir forest and rocks. And we spent an awful lot of time over the next 50 years cutting down trees. But it was land, and we had no money and no land, and this was a great chance to get started. But that land now, having begun as spruce and fir forest, is now as fertile as anything I can imagine. And we have done that just with local sources of organic matter. And I live in an area where all the old farms have been bought up by summer people. And they're anxious to maintain the farm look. So every summer they hire somebody with a bush hog to come in and mow the fields. And I'm a pretty smart boy, and I go and visit them and I say, you know, all that dry grass around your house, that's really dangerous. That could catch on fire and that'd be the end of it. Would you like me to rake that up and take that away? And they say, oh my gosh, yes. So we could get all the spoiled hay we wanted for making compost and everything. And everybody always thinking that compost and material like that has to come from the rear end of an animal, but that animal has eaten hay in order to create it. And if you compost hay successfully, you can make compost as good as composted manure or anything like that. So when one of the nice young women on JM's staff asked if I would come up and join this, I said, okay, this is neat, because back when I was getting started, there was nothing like this. I had to go everywhere and talk to everybody in order to learn things. And I actually ran tours of farms in Europe. We would go to Germany and France and Italy and England. And in the process back then, and we're talking the 60s when I was first doing this, I realized the Europeans were way ahead of us. We didn't have flame weeding. We didn't have all sorts of other things that they had. And so as I saw all of that and saw what was happening in the U.S., how our agriculture department was going out of its way to put down the organic growers, I got to thinking, wow, wouldn't it be nice if someday they held a testimonial dinner at the USDA headquarters to all the old people, all the people who had been my teachers as I was learning it, as they retired, to thank them for the effort they'd made, even though they didn't appreciate that effort. And that idea stuck with me, and I finally got a chance to do something like that because Esalen, do you know where Esalen is? You get to hang out naked in hot tubs with other people there. It's great. They were very interested in organic farming, and they offered to put together what I was suggesting. And we called it the Agrarian Elders. And the Agrarian Elders at that point were people who had been farming for 50 years, and organic farming, and had built beautiful farms in the process. And so at that session, it was just unbelievable. And what's his name? Barbara. What's the woman who came and filmed it? Jerry Garcia's wife. Right, she was making films back then. She came and filmed it, and we all had a wonderful time. And so, knowing that history and having known all of it, I just wonder, I wrote some names down here. How many of you have ever heard of Bob Cannard? Okay, that's a few of you. He's one of the more curious of the organic types. He farms in California, and for a while he was Alice Waters' favorite source of vegetables because she said he did everything perfectly. But even earlier, and this is the type of person I wanted the USDA to acknowledge, was a gentleman named Paul Keene, who ran a farm called Walnut Acres in Pennsylvania. And unlike today, where you can wander into most food co-ops and buy whole wheat and everything, back when I was starting in the 60s, the only way you could get that was to get it by mail from Walnut Acres. And they actually made peanut butter that was made out of peanuts. And they actually got sued because the Food and Drug Administration definition of peanut butter allowed 15% of saturated fat in there, and it could come from anywhere. So they were making their peanut butter out of pure peanuts. So there was a strange world back there, but it was possible to get good food. And Paul Keene, he was one of the best farmers. He ran a whole operation that had livestock and grains and vegetables and everything. So he was gone by the time the Agrarian Elders came along. But so when I got this invitation, I thought, okay, these people, and that refers to all of you, these are the next Agrarian Elders once they get a little older. And they're the ones who are going to be leading us into the new world, the future world of organic market gardening. And JM is going to all this trouble to train them up. So I'm curious to see what they're thinking and how they're thinking. And so that's a long answer to the question, but that's how I came to be here this morning.
Wonderful. It opens up all kinds of doors in my mind. I think what I want to talk about is there's a quote that comes to my mind very often, which is progress takes away what forever took to find. And when I think about that, I often think about when you talk about communing with the secrets of the universe and how organic is all about just tapping into the natural system. And yet progress, as is so often seen today, is about defeating nature or sidestepping nature or just ignoring nature altogether. So I would like you to talk a little bit about the progress that you've seen in your lifetime, and more importantly, what has given you the most hope that people are saying...
Say that one again. What has
given you the most hope that people are saying no to progress and instead reconnecting with what forever took to find?
Well, most of the articles that talk about how we tend to ignore or want to push nature around always state, wait a minute, we're part of it. So we need to acknowledge that this system out there, and it is an intricately designed system. I've heard the quote, nature is not more complicated than we understand. It is more complicated than we can understand. And that sometimes comes pretty close. And when I read a lot of the research today, a lot of this is coming from Europe, where they're looking at what's happening in the root zone of plants and how plants can give off exudates, nutrients for the plants, other plants in the soil, through their roots that stimulate the population of bacteria in the soil they're growing in. And those bacteria they're stimulating are the ones that are doing them the most good and helping their ability to remain pest-free. Normally, I'm an atheist, but some of that almost makes me believe in God, because it's just unbelievable that these systems are operating the way these European researchers describe them. So my attitude toward the natural world is just bring it on. And my favorite research the whole time I've been involved in this game has been on whether healthy plants actually do resist pests, as the old Rodale books would always say. And that has been my experience. I've never used pesticides and don't intend to start. And fascinatingly enough, I've been on my present farm since 1968. Not once in all those years has an entomologist from the University of Maine come down to my farm to find out how I'm managing. They have no interest in learning that they are wrong. Anyway.
That's pretty good.
Could you take us back to the 60s and 70s and explain a bit what was so exciting and subversive as well about this organic movement? Because right now, I think we're all still fighting against something. And I mean, you'd almost think like, really? Like we're still not there. But you know, you were a pioneer, and it was even worse in some ways, I think, at least the subversiveness of it. So could you tell us about that?
Yeah, the nice thing about organic farming at the time, because we had the Vietnam War and other things that we were protesting, but we could actually do something in organic farming. We actually could prove the scientists wrong by what we were turning out on the farm every day. There was no way, even though Barbara was getting arrested protesting in New York City, there was no way that you could battle the Vietnam War in that same way because you were just going to protest or something. And our protest was tactile. You had these beautiful vegetables you'd grown. You grew them without needing any of the materials that modern science said you needed, and you were succeeding at it. So that would have inspired us at any time, but that was especially inspiring then. It was the one area of our lives where we didn't feel hopeless, where we didn't feel that we couldn't make a difference, that this was a way to make a difference. Not that the USDA or any of the ag scientists were ever listening. They weren't. But we knew we were beating the pants off them anyway.
I'm pretty sure most people in this room would relate to that this is the only thing, in a sense, we can do to fight the system, so to say, if you know what I mean.
Back in, let's see, the 70s, I got interested in growing greenhouse tomatoes. And it turned out that the experts at the time were all up in Quebec. And there was their guru who lived even further north in Quebec City, I think. And these guys, we would come up and visit them, and we felt like a bunch of Asian tourists with our cameras taking pictures of everything. But they were always nice. They would answer all our questions, and they were succeeding unbelievably. And we would go back to Maine or Vermont or wherever we were living at the time, and just having seen that it could be done, we were that much better instantly. And then this was the best part of it, I thought. The Quebecois would come down and visit us. And all of a sudden, they would bring out their cameras because we had taken what we learned from them and expanded upon it, and we're doing it even better. So that's the beauty of exchanging information. You're eventually going to learn something from the person you taught something to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Why is it, Eliot, that you decided at some point to share instead of just take in knowledge? Because you were probably one of the most, actually, I think you are the most well-read person in the room in regards to farming. But you wrote a book, you became a leader, you became an advocate, and you're here today because of all that, and you stand out in that regard. So how did that happen? Why?
Well, first off, I think what we do for a living is the most relentless work you can possibly do. I even find now that I'm retired, we've leased our farm, I come back from town, I come in the driveway, and the first thing I do is look over at all my greenhouses to make sure, if it's a sunny day, that the roof vents are open. Because the power hasn't gone off. But that is so much a habit with me that sometimes you can't escape. And even after I've retired more or less, I'm thinking that way. And I could not share because of all the people who shared with me. I mean, when we were going around visiting farms, I was telling somebody here, the wonderful story of being at an IFOAM conference in Paris. And there was a very experienced, older Japanese farmer there. And he didn't speak any English. He did, however, speak some French. I spoke some French, and we spent the whole conference interviewing each other in French, which was, talk about a wonderful experience. It was the only language we had in common. And it's just so many experiences like that where people shared their knowledge with me. How could I not want to spread it further?
And what made you willing to be an advocate in the face of such adversity? I know Dave Chapman has told us more than once how much vitriol and hate you received and abuse as organic pioneers. And I think today we really take that for granted because we might be fighting something, but we're generally not fighting much of that.
But I just felt sorry for the people who were giving me abuse, that they would one day realize that they were on the wrong side of the argument.
Of history.
Because it was becoming clearer and clearer all the time that some of the miracles, and I believe what we were claiming was thought to be miracles by the pesticide people, some of these miracles were actually viable and testable in scientific ways. And most of the data coming out of Europe now on plant-pest relationships backs up everything we were talking about. And then, of course, Silent Spring came out. It was getting harder and harder for those guys to defend their pesticides. That was a wonderful moment in time.
You just mentioned a pretty famous book. Everyone knows about Rachel Carson's Silent Spring. But it brings up the topic of your very famous library. And I think many people would love to have a look at that and know more about it. But what I want to ask you is, I often wonder how much information is essentially lost in the transition from person to person to person over time. Like the telephone game when you whisper something into the ear and then by the end the message is different. And now we have so much access to information, not necessarily from books, but all over the place. And I wonder how much we take for granted and how much value is there in going back to these old texts. And should people in this room be digging in to, what is in your library? I
have a library of about 2,500 volumes that I have assiduously collected over the years. And at the start, nobody was interested in the old organic books. And I used to get them from used bookstores in England for 35 pence or something like that. So it wasn't costing me a fortune to put a library together. But there were times back in the early years of our farm when we were living on about $2,000 a year, and I would realize that I was tithing to the bookstore. 10% of my income was going to buy books. They were inexpensive books, but it took a lot of effort. And they're not all books. And so I probably have as good collection of back issues of the Journal of the Soil Association as anybody on this side of the Atlantic. But there were other magazines. And for the last 10 years of his life, I believe Sir Albert Howard was printing a Soil and Health magazine. And Newman Turner, a British livestock farmer, had a journal he put out for a couple of years. And so I have gone out of my way to find back issues of all of those things. And that is where some of the things you mention that could have gotten forgotten or fallen into the cracks, if you go look in all those old journals, they are there. The other good one, there was one in the U.S. out of the Midwest during the Dust Bowl years. And it was an organization started to connect together the people who were interested in good ideas. And that journal went on for between 1942 and 1954. And the back issues of that in my office are just, it was called The Land. It was just, some of these people were eloquent. I wish I were as eloquent as them, so I get to read their stuff and then I can copy it. But no, the number of people who have been commenting intelligently on what JM is teaching all you guys has been going on for a very long time, and is impressive.
This podcast is proudly supported by Tessier Greenhouses. Tessier has always been one of my top choices for greenhouses and tunnels. For over 45 years, they've been manufacturing high quality and incredibly strong structures right here in North America. Their products can withstand the heavy snow loads we faced here in the Northeast, and their prices are among the best in the market. Tessier offers excellent service and expertise, always ready to help with customized solutions. I particularly appreciate their commitment to innovation and their willingness to listen to the needs of growers. At the Old Mill, we use several of their Gothic Caterpillar tunnels and micro tunnel for season extension, and I'm always impressed with their design and build quality. Without companies like Tessier, food sovereignty just wouldn't be possible. So thank you, Tessier, for helping us growers feed our community year-round. You guys rock.
Use promo code MGI10 for 10% off your first order and free shipping in select regions.
Before we continue, friends, I want to tell you about New Society Publishers. New Society is not your average publisher. Their focus is on positive impact. Their books cover important issues like climate action, food justice, and sustainable farming, and they practice what they preach. They are a certified B Corporation, certified carbon neutral, and they print on recycled paper. They published my first book, The Market Gardener, which has brought thousands of people to the world of small-scale farming. And with their extensive collections of books, including popular titles like The Seed Farmer from my good friend Dan Brisebois or Coppice Agroforestry, you too can learn to garden, farm, or live a greener life. Hop over to newsociety.com, check out their books, and use the promo code MARKET25 for 25% off on all of their books. This is a sweet deal, friends. New Society Publishers, cultivating change one page at a time.
Would you be able to share with us the kind of the origin story of a few of the most basic tenets of organic farming? Because, these in many ways are ancient practices from around the world, but they were also lost, at least in our Western world. And people had to, I think, fight pretty hard to bring them back and discover them and put them into those texts that you were reading from, the late 1800s into the early 1900s. So could we start with crop rotation? How, in our modern Western context, have we come to understand that?
Did you guys get a short 4-pager I wrote? Okay.
Yeah, they all have it. Has it?
Yeah. It's entitled Processes, Not Products. And I wrote it because I noticed one of the changes in the world since I got into this many years ago is the number of products for sale that will supposedly make organic farming easier for you. And in the old days, we farmed with processes. And a crop rotation is a process. Green manures are a process. And those processes, you don't have to buy anything to do that. And one of the things I encountered over the last 10 years that has convinced me that green manures are the way to go was we were buying some compost in to add to what we were producing on the farm from an organic dairy farm. And we were very suspicious of the compost that was coming in general and its quality. And however, that was costing us $75 a yard delivered. And that was a lot of money to be paying. And we finally decided, okay, what we are buying is organic matter. And the wonderful thing about organic matter, you can grow it on farms. That's what farms do. They grow organic matter. And there is no better way to make land fertile than to grow something on it and put that back into the soil. Everybody always thinks of soil organic matter as this magical thing you don't want to lose. You want to lose it because when it decomposes, it's when it nourishes next year's crop. And if it just sits in your soil and doesn't do anything. And so that's why I've always, in case any of you are no-tillers, this is just my personal take on it. I've always thought tilling made a lot of sense because it encouraged the organic matter that you had when your temperature and your moisture were correct to decompose and allow new crops to grow on the residues that were left. As long as you were yearly adding more organic matter to your stockpile.
I want to ask the room, by show of hands, how many people are using quite a bit of external input on their farm? So Eliot, seeing that, show us the way, teach us, tell us how can people, and I'm curious what you think too, JM, because obviously, part of the kind of practical market gardening that we teach and you've taught is using inputs, but, because they work and it's efficient, it's practical. But I think Eliot has something else here to say as well, and I think we're all quite curious about that.
I can understand the interest in bringing in outside organic matter, purchasing it, because the world we live in is determined to sell you things whether you need them or not. And the sales pressure out there is really, and it requires an intimate knowledge of what organic farming really is to resist that sales pressure, because anytime you bring organic waste materials onto your farm, you run the risk of bringing in pollutants. And especially if you're buying some municipal compost, which is made from waste products. And people making compost are paid to dispose of waste products. They want to make them disappear. They're not paid to create clean compost. And so if you look at compost you just purchased, you have no way of telling what was disposed of to make it. And back in the Sir Albert Howard days, that was probably a clean product because it was made from your own farm's waste. But when it's coming from elsewhere, and that began bothering me because the quality of the compost determines the quality of the vegetables I'm growing. And what mainly interests me about organic growing is being able to provide our customers with exceptional food that is not accidentally polluted by the products, the byproducts of our industrial world.
So
which is why I no longer use seaweed. Because the river that runs down through Maine, the Penobscot, there is an Indian reservation up north of Bangor called Indian Island. And the people on Indian Island are being told not to eat the fish from the Penobscot anymore because just upstream of Indian Island is a large landfill right next to the river that's leaking PFAS into the river. I mean, when it comes to an ignorant species, human beings are bordering on getting a prize for that because we do things that make very little sense.
I'm disappointed to hear that because I picked seaweed with you on your farm.
Yes.
And it was just this beautiful moment, rolling down with the tractor to the ocean, picking the seaweed, bringing it up.
It was just some of my favorite work because I was working with what the natural world was providing me. And when you're on land cleared from spruce fir forest, you didn't get many benefits. And here was one benefit nearby. Mm-hmm. But after investigating what was coming down the Penobscot River to the beach where I was getting the seaweed, that was what. So am I wiser now than I was years ago? I hope so, but that was one of the changes I made, JM.
For how long has the farm been self-fertile, would you say?
Oh dear, we stopped buying the compost from that organic dairy farm about 10 years ago, and hadn't bought any compost. And for a while, there was compost for sale all over Maine. Anybody who had a pile of organic matter they didn't know what to do with would call it compost, and it was just. And so we've been trying hard not to be part of that for a long time.
I want to ask a question. Eliot, do you have any thoughts on why the small-scale farming movement got to a no-till frenzy? Like, because it feels like it wasn't there before, and then it became such a thing. And
yeah, I've always noticed, JM, that the eco-types, and organic farmers are definitely the eco-types, are very susceptible to anything that makes them out to be doing something bad. And the chemical companies were very effective at convincing everybody that tillage was bad because they knew that without tillage, you couldn't be an organic farmer because that was the way you cleaned up your fields, you got rid of weeds. And they knew they didn't need tillage because they could use glyphosate. And, that's where the whole regenerative movement makes no sense. And, everybody today is embracing regenerative. It's this nice new word. And it basically they're using it to replace organic because it was so easy to say, oh, organic is sinful because it tills. And I think I'm just resistant to that sort of thinking. Back when we were all told that fat was going to kill us, I kept eating butter the whole time. I happen to think butter is a health food. It is one of my favorite foods. And if you read the intelligent literature, fat doesn't make you fat either. So anyway, it's so easy to get conned into following something, and that was just a guilt trip that a lot of the eco-types fell into. And, not that there weren't options. I mean, Rodale was very smart coming up with that crimper. That was a neat way to be able to get rid of green manures, or at least lay them down and plant through them. Those were reasonable ideas. But
for you, like piling on 6 to 8 inch of compost every time you want to plant doesn't make a lot of sense, does it?
Oh, well, that is the most ridiculous idea ever. And that was that guy in Sweden who was pushing it. What's his name? I'll think of it in a minute. But he was a Brit living in Sweden. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But had you seen some of that stuff from past books and?
No, I have noticed with my daughter Clara that she was very interested right from the start in becoming an expert, and didn't want to waste time waiting for that to happen or learning for that to happen. And so there is a tendency to want to have the instant organic farm. And if you can spread 6 inches of municipal compost, I mean, it's genius. Weeds that germinate at soil level can't make their way up through 6 inches of covering. So you have a weed-free farm. I calculated once for 1 acre of my farm, that much compost was going to cost me, what was it? Some incredible amount of money every year at $75 a yard to do that. And certain researchers, I'm always pleased when there are these people at universities who have enough guts to say what needs to be said, have done studies of that, and there are almost toxic levels of excess nitrogen in the soil under those farms that are polluting local water supplies and everything. So this is, I just like to try and keep it simple.
Yeah, it's for those who perhaps don't know, listening to this, Eliot just finished writing a new book, which is coming out in November at Chelsea Green, the publisher. And
it's called The Self-Fed Farm. And it was the only way I could figure out how to keep producing clean food and having organic matter in the soil, which is the most beneficial way to do that, by just growing my own organic matter. And the nice thing about green manures is they keep working while you sleep. And so, you don't have to be trucking in loads of organic matter. It's being created on your land. And if you look at all the things you can do, green manures are in, I think, 15 different plant families. So whatever crop rotation you're running, you can figure out how to fit green manures into that. They can be planted with the simplest equipment. They are scale neutral. They're useful on large farms as well as small farms. There are so many benefits to them. And you can grow them at times of year when you're not growing crops. A lot of people say, oh yeah, but if I'm using the soil to grow green manures, I'm not using it to grow crops. But we don't ever run into that because we use it to grow green manures at times when there isn't enough sun or it's too cold to grow crops. And there are those little windows in the course of the year when that's possible. And anyway, I'm just curious how all of you new young hotshots. No, and I'm serious. I came here because I have great respect for JM and the people he teaches. React to what I'm suggesting in this new book.
If anyone would want to actually come up and talk, you can talk to the mic so that we capture it, if you wish. If anyone has a response to Eliot.
I'm not surprised, Eliot, that people are, at one point, it's important to listen also. I know you want people to share, but I think everyone here is really excited about you telling what you think, because...
Or the conclusion I have come to after 50, 60 some years in this game, yeah.
And I know that for having spoken to you in previous years, you were kind of a little bit roughed up by what you were seeing, and you felt like you needed to say something more and just perhaps address this new trend and give your perspective on this and perhaps help some people self-correct, if I can say that, or just give them a broader perspective on fertility and the management of it on the farm. What I'm talking about in the book, basically, I farmed with substitutes for chemical inputs when I started. And I still, I'm still a believer in phosphate rock. Mm-hmm. Because you need phosphorus and it isn't going to appear from nowhere. And it is a long-term nutrient that is made available by the other processes you're using in your soil. So I say in the book that we put it in at the start, and every so often we add a little more so we have a phosphorus reserve in the soil. When I started out, I read, okay, Eliot, you cleared the wrong land. Spruce fir forest is not going to give you fertile soil. An oak or maple forest would give you better soil. And so I wondered if there was some way I could make permanent improvements in my soil. And it turned out I had a neighbor who had a business shucking clams. And he would show up at my place when he finished work at 3:30 in the afternoon with about 1,000 clamshells a day and give them to me. And that went on for a number of years. And one day when I was spreading the clamshells, the county agent stopped by. This is the only time a county agent ever stopped by the farm. And he looked at this and he said, Eliot, that's crazy.
They won't break down for 100 years. And I said, that's the perfect metaphor for the difference between the way you guys think and I think. I'm trying to create a long-term fertility here and a little natural calcium in the soil like a naturally limestone soil would have. We'll do that. Yeah, he wasn't convinced.
How long ago was that?
That was close to when I started there in 69 or 70.
Are the shells gone now?
No, you can still see them in the soil.
So,
the rototiller is great for breaking them up into smaller particles.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about the one tool that's been my best friend on the farm since the beginning. You've guessed it, the BCS two-wheel tractor. BCS is a compact powerhouse, lightweight, durable, and made in Italy, where small-scale farming is a way of life. These machines don't compact your soil, and they power dozens of professional-grade implements, from seedbed prep to mowing, trenching, shredding cover crops, and even clearing the snow or cutting wood. Whether you're running a flower farm, a veggie operation, or a homestead, BCS saves you time and energy season after season. I've used mine for over 20 years, friends, and it's never let me down once. Join over 2 million users in 80 plus countries who trust BCS. Visit bcsamerica.com to explore their full lineup and find a dealer near you. That's bcsamerica.com. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Belle Serre Inc. Belle Serre is a professional team specializing in the installation, maintenance, and repair of greenhouses and dome all across Quebec and Ontario. Whether you need help building a greenhouse that's too hard to tackle on your own or just replacing your plastic, the Belle Serre team has got you covered. I've worked with them on my last project, and I can tell you, friends, they're trustworthy, hardworking, skilled, and always attentive to their client. They're a bunch of young lads that are eager to make a difference. I really, really like them, and you can reach them on Facebook or Instagram, or simply by giving them a call. Yes, the phone still works today. 819-816-4620. A big thank to the team from Belle Serre for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You guys are truly a great team, and our agricultural community is lucky to have you. There's, I don't know, Chris, if you allow me to switch. I don't want to switch gear, change subject. I know that your good friend Dave Chapman just entered the room. Dave is there, a friend of ours at the Market Gardener Institute. And I know, Eliot, also the last few years, you've been really active on the front of opposing USDA and, the fight to keep organic inorganic. I don't know if you want to say a few words about that.
Well, when I first met Dave years ago, I was living in Vermont, and he was farming in Vermont. And he was farming with 2 oxen that he had trained. Now, this is great. This is the old-fashioned thing. And we became friends, and I shared my library with him, and we had all sorts of other farming experiences today. But what he has done, and if you think of how much money the NOFAs, the MAFCAs, and all these people have, they have done nothing at all to try and get hydroponics out of organic, even though there was absolutely no legal thing that allowed Miles McAvoy, who was head of organic back then, to declare it legal. And only Dave came up and said, no, we have to stop this. And he put together this wonderful organization called the Real Organic Project. And it certifies farmers who are farming the way I think most of us think one should be farming. It doesn't charge them anything for certification. It's just, I think it's the salvation of organic as we once knew it. And however, sometimes I think we're swimming upstream, Dave. But
as you said, Eliot, we don't have a snowball's chance in hell.
yeah, because the forces against us are, see, back when organic became popular, and I don't know if I can put a date on that, but let's say sometime in 1970, the merchandisers came in and took over. They pushed the farmers out of the leading roles in determining what is and what isn't organic. And the merchandisers thought the more organic, the better, we can sell more. And I mentioned in that sheet of paper you have this this group that is one of the largest wholesalers in the country, and they had a blogger hired to try and dissuade any farmer or eater who suggested that what was going on was not a good idea. And they came up with their pop phrase, a circular firing squad. And they would use that all the time to try and denigrate anybody who would like to see organic focusing on pure food rather than just focusing on producing as much lousy pseudo-organic. And I mention in the book that if some mediocre winery wanted to get into the expensive wine business, and they were growing the same grapes as Chateau Lafite, and they were aging them in oak barrels the same way Chateau Lafite does, and put a Chateau Lafite label on their bottle, they would be laughed off the market. But the USDA is basically doing that by calling hydroponic organic. And since they control the word organic now, and Dave is always getting mad at me for being too confrontational, but I think the Real Organic Project just needs to claim, I'm sorry guys, organic is our word, we created it, but we would have to have an awful lot of money in the bank account to buy the lawyers to keep Dave out of prison, so. Anyway, but this is a battle that I think we need to fight, and I think we need to win. But it's a tough one.
Could you share a message to the room, being that this is all, well, not all, but mostly rather young and people that are leaders and are going to pave the way towards, let's hope, a better future? Could you share a word about the reason that fighting, like the Real Organic does, is so important? Why do we need to take a stand and not just sit back and kind of just...
Repeat that again, I'm sorry.
Why is fighting so important? Why can't we just return to our land and sit back and let the world pass by?
Yeah, because the other side is putting out propaganda that totally erases what you're doing. And the world we live in, especially because of social media.
Yeah.
My God, this is, I was glad social media wasn't around back in the, anyway, This is a harder way to farm. As I said, it's relentless, but it is the most satisfying work I've ever done in my life. And, I have a book, if you haven't seen, Shop Class is Soulcraft. This is a wonderful defense of just doing real work, meaningful work. This is just a great book, and philosophical and everywhere else. So at the end of a day working on my farm, I could go to sleep happily. I had accomplished something worthwhile. Whether the day will come when we have kicked hydroponic out of organic, go Dave.
We'll get it done.
We'll get it done. People are hearing the call. We're already an hour into this, and no one has taken the opportunity to perhaps share a perspective, a comment, a question. So I want to make sure that you guys take this opportunity before we wrap things up here. So
Q&A time then?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, come on over, Maria. Come over.
I can also just stay here.
No, but we want to hear it.
Here, you can just speak to that.
Can't I just stay here?
It's because the listeners of the podcast need to hear you.
I feel so comfortable sitting. So first of all, I'm so very grateful for everything that you've done, and you really and also Dave, you've built a vessel for all of us so that we can, go comfortably down that river. But I feel very about this terminology of organic and regenerative. So I'm a farmer since not so long ago, and I call my farm a regenerative farm. And where we farm, we have very sandy soil in Germany. And you see, all these other farmers plowing the soil to death. And some of them are also organic farmers, and when you see the soil bare, and I'm not talking about the market garden, I'm talking about huge fields, depleted, no diversity, nothing, just dead land. So I can't call my farm organic because I can't go through that certification process. And so I call it regenerative because we don't plow. We made the decision not to plow. We also do not use glyphosate. I'm totally against it. We bring in our cows, and they bring in the manure on the fields. They are just out there all year round. So I can totally hear what you're saying, and I'm very grateful for this. And I've listened also to the podcast, and that really made me think about how we're still in this phase of transitioning, and we limit ourselves through terminology sometimes. So what is really important for me, I don't want to I don't want to give a word and a stamp to my farm and what we're doing. Yet we have to describe somehow what we're doing very simply to people who don't know. And just give it some sort of certificate and say this is organic, this is that, this is regenerative and whatever. And what I really think is what we have to get to is that intuitive understanding and doing the right thing with a lot of love for the land, and just observe and be in the context of your farm. I don't have the same soil as you have, and I have to make different decisions based on my context. And that's what I want to say.
I love your T-shirt.
May I sit down?
Feed the soil, starve the machine. That is great. The thing I saw when regenerative started, there were all of these Midwestern farmers who were blessed with beautiful, fertile soils when they started. And they had degenerated them because of their chemical farming techniques. And now they were claiming that they had a new system called regenerative, which allowed them to make up for those mistakes. And the only thing that allowed them to be regenerative was glyphosate. And Dave is always talking about how the movement he runs is the real organic, and maybe there will someday be a real regenerative movement to save regenerative.
That's a good one. That's beautiful. All right. Somebody else?
Yes. Just wanted to say that, even if we're in a different time, you started in the 70s and now we're in the 2000s. There's big difference, but there's also big similarity to the fight we need to continue. Like when I started my farm, I really started it from, I want to change my community. I want to change the world. Because I was also almost arrested because I protest too much. And I felt it was a meaningful way to change the world, somewhere we could actually make a difference. And I also want to talk about the plowing, like the tilling. Because you asked us a question earlier, if what we were taking about, tilling, no tilling, was it a propaganda from the bigger industry? And it made me realize that, hey, my grandfather was a farmer, my great-grandfather was a farmer, and they used to plow, but with their horse, it wasn't going that deep, not with a big tractor going like 3 feet deep into your soil. So are we asking the good question, like no-till versus till? Just maybe it's not the right question. How do you use till to, invade? Because if, like the chemical farmers don't need to till because they can just throw chemical fertilizer. Is it a way for them to, remove the independence farmer on have before?
I think you'll make Eliot very happy with your question, Alexi. So the neighbor from New Brunswick.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, right next to Maine.
Yeah.
Big question, right?
Now, present me your case again, just quickly.
Yeah, do you think the till and no-till debate is a way for the bigger industry to remove independence from farmers?
Okay. In my book, I cite Edward Faulkner as one of my heroes. And I say that all the websites out there that call Edward Faulkner the father of no-till should be embarrassed they didn't read past the title page of his book. Because if you read Plowman's Folly, he was 100% in favor of tillage. He was just suggesting that you mixed the organic matter into the top 4 inches of the soil where it could have some benefits. And the benefits it had was if you mix organic matter into the soil, as it decomposes, it gives off carbon dioxide, that terrible stuff that we're destroying the world with. And carbon dioxide in the soil mixes with water to create carbonic acid. and it is a very weak acid, but it dissolves minerals out of the rock particles in the soil that then can feed your crops. So there was a definite benefit to shallow non-inversion tillage, which is what Faulkner was in favor of. How all these people can be citing that book and never having read past the title page, I've never understood, but that is what's going on.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. One more question. One last question. I think we have time for more. Come on over. This is beautiful, by the way. These are great questions, and I think it ties in really well with what
this is
your
fantastic.
message is, Eliot.
This is what I hope we do, JM.
So, Eliot, thanks for talking about this.
Amos, bring it to your. I know you're tall, but
I'll squat. Tanya, is this okay? You talked about the seaweed from your river and why you stopped. There's a lot of rivers. I come from the UK, and there's a lot of rivers that are being polluted by the runoff from other agricultural or industrial agriculture. So what's the work that you've been doing around your place with tackling some of the issues, like you were explaining around the seaweed, and the pollution in the rivers, and how that impacts your farm and lots of other small-scale farmers where we get our water from?
Yeah, there is a company that cuts and dries seaweed in Iceland and dries it with heat from the earth. And I suspect the Icelandic water is pure enough that even I wouldn't object to. And if I wanted seaweed, because we always fed it to the livestock when I was farming in Vermont, it was just a health food tonic for them. I think it still has benefits. But I would go out of my way, though, to try and make sure that it couldn't have been polluted in any way, because it's a living system. And I will admit, I'm an absolute addict for oysters. And the best thing that has ever happened to the main fishing industry, better than lobsters, is they're raising oysters all over the place there now. And I haven't yet figured out what to do, because the nice thing about oysters, it's a livestock you can raise and not buy any feed for. And my neighboring oyster raisers, I keep telling them, you guys are breaking the law. You're not buying any feed for your livestock. And oysters feed themselves by taking water in and keeping the nutrients in it. And you'd be better off sitting on their back end and drinking the clean water they have cleaned for you. So I'm a little nervous that I'm going to wake up someday and say, oysters are not a good idea, but I haven't woke up and said that yet.
if there's one thing that I'm hearing, Eliot, not for the first time, because I've enjoyed good food with you and Barbara, and I know Barbara cooks very well for you and the crew all the time, but it's new to me that a big piece of your thought process is clean food in the end.
Yes.
It's not just farming organically, it's really
clean food.
it's clean food. And I think that's something that for me is new in my understanding of your thoughts, but it's really clear that that's one of your goals with this book and the work that you're promoting now.
Yeah, I will be dismayed if any food we are growing is less than beneficial for our treasured customers. When we first started planting carrots on the middle of August, and then eventually sliding a greenhouse over those beds of carrots so we could harvest them all winter long, what are known in our local area as candy carrots. If you leave carrots in the cold soil, they get so sweet. And these carrots are beloved by local children in the area where we live. They ask their parents to go buy them. And this is just such a wonderful thing that, I was in the store one day where we sell, and this kid was over there, and his mother said something to him and pointed to me. And he came over and he looked up and he said, "Are you the carrot people?" And I thought I should have a hat on with green sticking out of the top, that to this kid I was the carrot people.
That's beautiful. Chris, do you want to pose one question?
From our rapid fire, perhaps?
Or not, but I know that you said that you share the same kind of bookshelf with Eliot.
Yes, very much so. Well, I was very happy to hear that after I've asked maybe 3 guests on the podcast so far if they've read one of my favorite authors, which is an English author from the early 20th century. Eliot had read everything he ever wrote. It's Adrian Bell, who writes rural lifestyle memoirs from the 1920s through 50s in England. And I would like to ask you about that. So you have always been so passionate about organic agriculture and the science of it and the reality of it, but what also of the lifestyle and what I think we all see as really a romantic lifestyle, as much as we can get too far into that and not accept reality when it stares us in the face. I think everyone here would agree that it is romantic and that they feel meaning every day. And I guess the way I would phrase this, what I'm saying, is what has organic farming taught you? Not just what have you learned about it, but what has it taught you?
This has been the most satisfying work I've ever done. And the fact that I was able to figure out how to make a living at it, and maybe make a life is better than a living. I wasn't getting rich, but getting rich is a poor way to devote your life. Yeah, you get to hang around with a lot of useless idiots.
Eliot, he's asking if it's organic. I mean, romantic.
Yeah,
I'd say it's romantic.
Yeah.
Oh, do I think? Yeah. Wendell Berry probably describes a lot of the spiritual and romantic benefits of farming this way, as well as any author out there, and that's why I mentioned to you H.J. Massingham as another English writer who writes magnificent books about the benefits of rural living and I don't know. I just like it.
All right, so I'll be posing the last question. I know, Eliot, it's a big question, and I hope you won't mind, but seeing you in Barbara and good health and being active is really nice. And I know that Scott Naring, you mentioned him, lived to be 100-year-old.
Yes.
And you were probably inspired by that at a moment.
I was there for his 100th birthday. That was...
Wow.
Yeah. And when I moved to Maine and we started clearing this land, to earn a little money, I used to work 3 days a week in the morning with Scott. And here was a man who had debated everybody, had been put on trial in the First World War for writing a pamphlet entitled The Great Madness, how the rich were encouraging us to get into the First World War so they could make money. He was railing against the plutocracy, as a certain senator from Vermont is doing today. And working in the woods for 3 hours with Scott every morning was the best college history course I had ever had in my life, because he'd been everywhere, done everything. And he used to tell wonderful stories about how back when Nixon said, okay, it's okay to go to Russia, he went to Moscow, got on an Aeroflot plane, and went to China on an Aeroflot plane. And when the visit was over, he came to get back on the plane. He said everybody on board was wearing a 3-piece suit. All these bureaucrats. And the stewardess was coming down the aisle handing out vodka martinis on a tray. And Scott was pleased that the Russian sitting next to him in the plane seat spoke English. And he explained to the man that he'd been to Moscow in 1917, and there weren't any 3-piece suits, and there weren't any vodka martinis. And the man looked at him, lifted up his vodka martini to toast Scott, and he said, "We are enjoying the dividends of the revolution." He uses this totally capitalist investment term to say we're in charge now, and stories like that put you in touch with part of history that you never would normally hear. Yeah, there's a poem, "The Walrus and the Carpenter," and they're eating all these oysters, and but after the end of the First World War, some sharp people rewrote that poem, and it originally said, "Oh, oysters, we've had our little fun, shall we begin to," and it was now saying, "Oh, customers, we've had our little fun, shall we begin to trade again?" Of answer there was none. And that was scarcely odd, because they'd killed them, every one. So anyway, the First World War was incredibly destructive. And the world at that time realized that I wish we were slightly wiser today about these things. But anyway, I'm getting off the subject.
No, that's fine, Eliot. So we're gonna wrap this up. I want to thank you and Barbara for coming down to the Old Mill. I guarantee we'll have a beautiful meal tonight. Perhaps not Chateau Lafite, but we'll have some natural wines for everyone. Thank you guys for being. This was fun, eh? This was a good session together. So to everyone listening to the podcast, we salute you wherever you are, and we wish you, great adventures on your farms. Okay, this is it for this show. We'll see you next time.
And I just want to say thank you, Eliot. This was a real...
Thank you all. It's been a great audience.
All right. Hope you're enjoying the podcast. These are important conversations, and we're really excited to have them and to share them with everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to it, download the episodes, and please rate them. It makes a difference for us. We want to know what you think about these conversations. They're important. Check out the work that we do at the Market Gardener Institute. You can check out our website, themarketgardener.com. Our mission is to multiply the number of small ecological farms around the world. And we do this by offering training, online courses to new aspiring farmers, but also to seasoned growers. We're helping them take it to the next level. So you can check out the work that we do. You can follow us on social media. You can sign up to our newsletter to get a lot of freebies about gardening, farming, but also about how small-scale farming is changing the world. And that's really what we're all about, and that's really what this is all about. So again, thank you for tuning in. Super excited that you guys are on board. We are changing the world.